All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2026, number 90. Damn, we're 90 days in. Isn't that just amazing? Surprise, surprise. That is a reference that even I am too young to make. So today, I guess we should first start off by mentioning right now there are two. I think they're both on BackerKit. I might be wrong, but there are two crowdfundings for two TTRPGs that are going swimmingly. The first one is for Ironheart multiplayer. Basically, Ironheart, which I have my Ironheart book. This is the second book. The first book is just slightly out of reach, but this is the second book of Ironheart. I think this is an adventure for it or something. I don't know. It's a supplement. The actual Ironheart book. Can I get it? Come on. There we go. This is the actual Ironheart book. And it's a lovely little solo RPG. It was so popular, they're like, why don't we make it into a real RPG? And so right now they're crowdfunding the multiplayer version of it. And it's great. It's about you and your best friend, Giant Mech, going through the universe, having fun, getting to know each other, stuff like that. So that's the thing that's going on right now. And it launched earlier today, Traveler 5th Edition. Now, for anyone going, oh god, another D&D... No. This is the 5th version of the Traveler RPG, which was one of, if not the first sci-fi RPGs. It came out in like the late 70s, early 80s, I think. And it's been around that entire time. And they're now creating their 5th version. They are kickstarting it. Or they're doing it on BackerKit, actually. And I think their initial goal that they were looking for was like a little under $2,000. I know, right? Like, if you only need $2,000 and you're a company like Mongoose Publishing, why are you using crowdfunding? Whatever. They were funded in 2 minutes. Who'da thunk? And when I checked like an hour or two ago, they're at over $200,000. So even if they had asked for like $100,000, they still would be funded. For anyone who doesn't know, Traveler is a fairly crunchy TTRPG, but one of the most unique aspects of Traveler is, unlike something like D&D, where your background is something you choose while you're building your character, your background in Traveler is something that you create during your first session of Traveler. And by create, I mean you actually go through the process of creating a life for your character before they became a traveler, an adventurer, whatever they want to call it in that system. And it involves things like going to school, or being drafted into the military, or being a drifter, and all these other stuff. And one of the more unique things about Traveler is if you roll poorly, because all of this stuff where you're creating your backstory, that's kind of creating your character, all that stuff, it's rolling on a bunch of tables. And if you roll poorly enough, your character can die while you're creating that backstory. It's one of the weirdest parts of the game, but it's really, really interesting and fun. I have the most recent version of Traveler. I think I have the entire system because I got it in a bundle. And I think it's amazing. It was actually one of the systems I was thinking about using for my Metroid game that I read a couple years ago. Because it is a very kind of interesting, unique system. So, yeah, if you want to get in that, I will say, kickstarting Traveler is expensive. Like, if you just want the hardcover, I think it runs like $80 or $90. And that's really expensive for a TTRPG for just a single book. If you want just the PDFs of the books, effectively the core books for the series, it's 160 or $170. That's really expensive for a TTRPG. Now, I have not kept up with Traveller. As far as like pricing, I don't know if it tends to be a more kind of premium price TTRPG. But generally, one of the benefits of being part of a crowdfunder is you generally get a better deal on the books and stuff like that than you would buying them at retail or anything like that. That's one of the reasons why people like to do crowdfunding stuff, because it's a way to save a little bit of money. And if 70 or 80 bucks or 80 or I can't remember how much. I'm going to look it up because I have like 3 or 4 different emails from them because I'm following them. Because I like it. Where are you? Which email account did I sign up for all this shit under? There's Sword Wars. There it is. Traveller. Okay. I'm going to actually look it up right now. All right. So, yeah, as of right now, it's a 45-day crowdfunding thing, which is another thing that's kind of interesting. Normally, they're only 30 days. They have $245,000 out of a goal of $1,977. And for the pledge levels, yeah, for just everything on PDFs, it's $170. And then for the core rulebook, just the core rulebook, nothing else, no extra books or anything like that, it is $79 bucks, which is a lot for a core rule book. Now, as far as I can tell, like the other books that you theoretically can get, there's a core rule book, there's Gears and Robots, Worlds and Vehicles, and Starships. So it looks like there's a grand total of 4 books, but the remaining one look to be like extra gear and extra stuff like that. So theoretically, I think you should be able to play the game with just the core rulebook. I'm not 100% certain on that. Don't, call me out on this if I'm wrong. But it looks like you theoretically could play the game with just the core rulebook, but the rest of them will give you a much more complete package. And if you compare that to something like D&D, where their core rulebooks generally run about 60 or 70 bucks a piece, and you technically need 3 of them to be able to run, I guess it's kind of comparable-esque. But in this one, to get the complete starter package, whatever, requires 4 books. So, yeah. It's a little bit pricey for me. I was planning on backing it because I like Traveller and I'd like to see the new version. I do not have 170 bucks to get all the books, so I'm kind of trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to try and back this or not. But anyway, so those 2 things are a thing. Now, the real reason for this video is earlier today, and before anyone asks me any questions, I completely missed it because I was in bed and didn't check my email until it had already ended. But Sword World had a live stream today to talk about the upcoming English translation crowdfunding that they're going to be doing. And I believe that's a little over a month away. I can't remember if it's April or May. I'll look that one up too. All right, this will also be going through back. So May 2026 is when it's happening. So yeah, we're about 2 months away from that. The reason I'm bringing that up is I'm getting a little bit antsy about Sword World. I'm really, really excited to check it out. It is something that has fascinated me for a really, really long time. I can neither confirm nor deny that I may have English fan translations of the books, because I was able to find them online, and it immediately hooked me. But one of the more interesting things that I've been learning about Sword World as I started doing more searching and stuff like that, is their class system is really interesting because they split up their classes into major classes and minor classes. And basically, the big difference between them is major classes are going to almost exclusively focus on combat. Most of the benefits you're going to get from those classes are going to be giving you better combat stuff. Well, as your minor classes are going to be focused more on out of combat stuff, effectively kind of like a skill system. And for me personally, I think I've talked about this before in other videos, but like your standard TTRPG right now is going to, or at least your standard class-based TTRPG, is going to have your skills linked to your class in some way, shape, or form. Now, most modern ones, made after 5th edition was a thing, will also have a background that gives you access to some skills, but the majority of your skills are going to be part of your class, which is how we have classes like both Rangers and Rogues. If you've seen my videos where I talk about, what is a Ranger or what is a Rogue, both of those classes exist basically as a way to have a character that doesn't exclusively focus on combat. Because if we go back to like original D&D, the original release of it, there were 3 classes. You had Fighting Man, Magic User, and I think it was Priest or Cleric. I can't remember which one they called it back then. And basically all those were definitions of how you were going to interact in combat. Fighting Man used weapons. Magic User used magic. Priests or Clerics used healing spells and buffs and things like that. And so that was the reason there was only 3, because there was only 3 different ways to interact in combat. Either you used weapons, you used magic, or you were a support character. That was it. There was nothing else. Eventually, they added the Thief class, but the Thief class was not there to have a different way to interact in combat. The thing that made the Thief class unique was the fact that its specialty was out of combat stuff. So if you wanted to be useful out of combat, you chose the Thief class. And eventually, you would also get the Ranger, which was another one that was supposed to be kind of a hybrid between something that did well in combat, but also had quite a few things outside of combat that it could do. And so because of that, as TTRPGs kind of evolved and they stopped kind of completely defining your character by its class, they started adding other things in there to kind of vary things, and we started getting things like skill systems. Your skills were still very much tied to your class, because one of the reasons that rogues exist is for you to have a class that has a lot of skills, that can do a lot of things outside of combat. If we were to completely separate the skill system from classes to where whatever skills you have is completely separate from your class, the rogue would lose one of the things that really defines it. And it might just be something that is completely taken out of the class system, because you could create a rogue a number of different ways. If you didn't have like the skill system tied to the class, well, you could make a magic rogue by taking a wizard and then giving them a bunch of like lockpicking skills and things like that. Or you could create a more combat focused like assassin type rogue by taking a fighter or warrior style class and just giving them, sneaking abilities and lock picking and stuff like that. And so having an actual class called the rogue really wouldn't need to exist anymore, because in combat they're not really that different from most weapon-based classes. Like sneak attack is really the only thing that makes them different in combat. I mean, technically, you can also deal with cunning action in the 5th edition version of it. But if you go back to earlier rogues, really they weren't that much different. It's just they had lots and lots of skills. And so the way that Sword World, or at least Sword World 2.5, does it, I find absolutely fascinating. First of all, there's no limitation to what classes you can take and the things like that. Basically, every time you finish a session, you will get some experience, and you can use that experience to either level up one of the classes that you already have, or invest in a new class. And that can be either major or minor classes. So that in and of itself is really interesting. But the thing with the minor classes is, by adding a minor class onto your major class, you can effectively change how your character works. And because a lot of the minor classes are built more exclusively around like their version of the skills system, they're more out of combat stuff. Not all of them. Things like, I think the Fencer class does have some more combat oriented stuff. But for the most part, your minor classes are going to evolve, basically giving your character a bunch of skills. And from a game design standpoint, that does create a rather interesting idea. Like, good example. Do I still have it open? No, of course I closed it. Why would I keep the thing that I'm referencing today open? That would be dumb, wouldn't it? Sword World. I'm going to open this up real quick. Just a core book Juan. And we are going to... go to the classes. All right, so there are 3 different flavors of classes. You have warrior type classes, wizard type classes, and other type classes. And at least in Core Rulebook 1, all the other type classes are exclusively minor classes. So the warrior type classes, you have the fighter, pretty standard. The grappler, it's the monk, that's my class. The fencer, which is a minor class, and then the marksman are the fighter class. You will notice nothing in there is anything related to a rogue. They do have an other type class called the scout, which is effectively kind of like a rogue type class, but it's a minor class. So theoretically, you can add the scout to any class. Like, you could be a sorcerer that also has levels in scout, and you could be kind of a magical thief, or you could be a conjurer scout and be kind of a magical thief with a bunch of little minions that go around. I really like the conjurer. I think they're really interesting from a class design perspective. And yeah, I think it's cool. And so because of that, you can really create some interesting characters. And it got me thinking about Record of Lodoss War. And again, for anyone who doesn't know, Record of Lodoss War was a D&D campaign that got turned into originally a replay and then a light novel series, and then I can't remember if they made a manga out of it or if it just went to anime. But it was one of the defining anime series of the 80s. And it defined fantasy anime and the fantasy genre in Japan to this day. Like, people still consider the art style and everything from Record of Lodoss War when they're making new Japanese anime with a fantasy theme. And so the original characters like Deedlit and everybody else, they were all D&D characters. However, after they finished their first effective season of it, they started feeling very, very limited by what D&D would allow them to do. And so that's where Sword World came in. It was originally just created so that these science fiction authors could have a little bit more freedom in defining the characters that they were making. And I don't know if the first version of Sword World had this same major minor class system. Again, I know there's at least one of you out there that is very familiar with the Japanese TRPG market. So if you wanted to comment and clarify some things, I would be happy. But it does kind of make sense when you compare what you could and couldn't do in AD&D first edition. And I think technically, they weren't using AD&D. I think they were using basic. Because if I remember correctly, I believe Deedlit was an elf, as in just a elf, as in that's the entire class. Let's go here, and I want to go Record of Lodoss War. And I just want the characters. What are they? Wow, there's lots of them. There we go. List of Lodoss War characters. So, you had Deedlit, whom I believe was just an elf, which in original D&D, the elf class was technically a fighter wizard. They could use weapons and armor, but light armor, but they could also cast some spells. Parn, I believe, was just a fighting man. Eto was a priest. Slain was a magic user. And then Gim was a dwarf, which was another one of those races that was a class. Dwarves were basically they were very similar to a fighting man, but they had a few extra dwarfy type things. So I could definitely see them starting to get feel really limited by the fact that there's really not a ton of variation that you can do in original and basic Dungeons and Dragons. And so by creating this major minor class system where you basically can go, well, this is how I deal with combat, which again was how original D&D defined your class, is just this is how you deal with combat. But then also have the minor class system is this is how I deal with not combat. That creates a really customizable character system that allows you to make, for lack of a better term, weird characters, which are my bread and butter. I've mentioned this many times before, but due to my extensive experience with Dungeons and Dragons, specifically 5th edition, but also I've done a lot of 4th edition. I haven't actually played 3rd edition at a table, but I have played Pathfinder at a table, which is basically just 3rd edition, with some quality of life features. Which I will admit, other than the fact that nowadays Pathfinder has some of the craziest rules bloat that has ever existed, because it's existed for as long as it has, and they just kept publishing new stuff for it. Most of the changes that they make for Pathfinder make D&D better. Like 3.5, if you like that style of TTRPG, is a great system. Pathfinder fixes quite a few of its flaws. It adds a few new problems by adding more complexity to it and stuff like that. But I will say Pathfinder is just this much better, in my humble opinion, than D&D 3.5 if you're looking for something that is streamlined. And that may have everything to do with the fact that it built on a system that was already very well designed and then just kept designing it more. But anyway, so because of my extensive experience with D&D, playing like normal characters or classic characters, whatever you want to call them, traditional characters, is really boring to me. Like, I don't get to play D&D very often. And the last time I actually got to play as a character, a buddy of mine had a campaign that he was running, and he invited me to play with them, which was really, really fun. And so I decided to, I'd already kind of built a character like this before just for fun, and I'm like, hey, can I use this character? And what the character was, it was a Battlemaster fighter that fought by throwing magic playing cards. Like full-on Gambit style character. Except I had them using like a kind of a strange Liverpudlian style accent that I didn't do super well. Because for anyone who doesn't know, the Liverpool accent is not an easy accent to pull off. Like it's a rough one, but it's really, really fascinating and really, really interesting when you hear it. One of my favorite aspects of it is a lot of the words. If the word ends with a consonant, they will end the word early and then put the last consonant from that word onto the start of the next word. And it's a really fascinating accent. So anyway, and so yeah, it was a Battlemaster fighter that took the throwing weapon fighting style from, I think it was Tasha's. It was one of the two big supplements for 5th edition. So he took the throwing weapon fighting style, and I think he took one feat that gave him access to Hunter's Mark. One of the, I think it was Fey Touched, because Fey Touched allowed you to learn a single divination spell, and Hunter's Mark is divination. And so, yeah, I had this really cool, and he took the sharpshooter feat so that I could attack at range, at full range without disadvantage, because throwing weapons in general have very short range. And it was super fun to play. Like in the campaign, another buddy of mine was actually playing my Dragon Knight class that I'd published, which was really, really fun to see someone actually playing it and seeing how it worked when someone that wasn't me was playing it. It was super, super cool. But we got into this kind of rival, like I don't know how it started, but we just got into this kind of rivalry where like the campaign had been going on for like a couple years before I started. And so when I came in, my character was new and he was flashy and he was a gambler and he was doing all these cool card trips. And I have a deck of cards at my computer so I could just bring them out and I'd flip around and do some pretend cardistry because I can't actually do any of that. But I'm doing all this stuff and I'm having fun with it. And the rest of the party's like, oh, that's really cool. And he's like, I'm cool too. I could turn into a dragon, man. And so we got into combat this one time and he's doing his Dragon Knight thing. He was, I can't remember what the subclass is, but he used a double weapon. And so a very aggressive melee-based Dragon Knight. And I'm just standing in the back chucking cards past him. And I tend to be getting the last hit on a lot of these guys just because that's how the dice were falling. And I was rolling relatively well. And so we just had this little rivalry. It was like, yeah, you're welcome for protecting you. I was like, oh, really? And exactly how many of those did you kill versus how many did I kill? Because it feels like to me that I was able to kill all of those little fire dog things, and you weren't really doing much of anything except standing there and get bit on. But no, I think you were really good. You were great. Like, if you weren't there getting all, like, numbed by the bad things, I wouldn't have been able to do all of the useful things, like actually killing them, while you just sat there and turned into ground beef. So, and it was really, really fun. That campaign unfortunately died. We went and started another campaign. And again, I had to play a weird character because that's what I do. So I created a melee-based ranger, but their fighting style they were going to take was the druidic, I think it's called druidic warrior fighting style. What that means is it basically gave the ranger access to cantrips, which rangers normally don't get. They just get leveled spells, and rangers for the most part don't cast a lot of spells. And so I basically made a magic ranger, and one of the cantrips I took was basically just what it's supposed to do is you like grow claws and you slash at someone, and I got the GM to agree to let me I basically had like a wooden sword on my back. What I would do is whenever I would attack, I would take this wooden blunt sword and I would enchant it, and it would get a magic edge, and I would attack with this two-handed wooden sword. And it was a really interesting, cool character, but very much not in any way an optimized ranger at all. I think I took the ranger. There's a ranger subclass that's basically like a planar ranger. I can't remember what they're called. And so I took the planar ranger version of it so I could have a teleport. And they were in an Eladrin, so another teleport, because I like teleporting characters. So yeah, I like to make weird characters. And a system like this, as much as I can understand it, again, the version of Sword World 2.5 that I have is a fan-translated version of it. And it works. I can understand it, but it's very obvious that this is a translation. Not because there's like incorrect grammar or anything like that, but comparing it, a fan translation specifically, comparing it to something that's had like an official translation with localizers and stuff like that, like the writing style and how they group information doesn't make sense in a Western TTRPG. I would assume most Japanese TTRPGs are laid out in a very, very similar manner. And I would also assume that if I spoke Japanese, this probably would make a little bit more sense to me than this fan-translated English version. Because again, it's not that I don't understand how the game works, but it does take me 3 or 4 read-throughs to fully understand how things work. Like, I'm still not 100% understanding what gaining extra levels in like the fighter class actually does, because it's spread out. Like the book is ordered in a kind of awkward way where you have like the introduction where they teach you how to make a character, and then you have the game rules section where they teach you how the rules work, and then you have the data section where they actually tell you what everything means. And it's a weird way to set up a book compared to most kind of modern Western TTRPGs. So you have to kind of flip back and forth between a bunch of different pages to fully understand what's going on. But anyway, yeah. So like I said, I really like this idea, and I don't know if there's other TTRPGs that actually do this, where your combat abilities are completely separate from your out-of-combat abilities. So if you want to be a roguelike character outside of combat that like sneaks around and picks locks and, you know, pickpockets and stuff like that, but then in combat, you know, you're a berserker, you theoretically could create a character like that using a system like what I think Sword World 2.5 does, because they're completely different sets. They're completely different things. And I just find that really, really fascinating. Because it's not something that I personally have seen in most Western TTRPGs. Because, again, a lot of them take inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons, and, again, the entire purpose of the rogue class is to be the class that isn't hyper-specialized into how they interact in combat. They do all of this out of combat stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I find it really, really interesting, and part of me wants to go, because again, Record of Lodoss War continued. I don't know when they switched from Dungeons and Dragons to Sword World. And I don't believe when they first kind of switched over systems, I don't believe it was called Sword World at that point. I think it was just the Record of Lodoss War TTRPG or supplement or something like that. And eventually they published like a generic version of it called Sword World. But I'd be really interested to see, like, you know, for Deedlit. Deedlit's thing is she can invoke spirits that give her access to various magic and things like that. And so I kind of wonder if in this, you know, if when they kind of translated her into Sword World, if she was something like, if she was a conjurer that also, you know, added in maybe like fencer levels in there so that she could use some weapons, but then she also could invoke her spirits, or if she was more of a sorcerer, like all that stuff. I find that fascinating. And again, I'm looking at 2.5. I have no idea what the original like 1.0 version of this system was. So anyway, like I said, I find it really interesting. And if you guys know of any TTRPGs where they do that, where it's your combat is this and your skill system are this, and you can mix and match completely. There's nothing about skills that are built into your character itself. I'd love to hear about that. So yeah, like I said, interested to hear from you guys. If you know of any TTRPGs like that, put it in there. And then if any of you guys are actually familiar with Sword World, let me know if I got anything wrong or any other kind of anecdotes you'd like to share about Sword World. Otherwise, that's going to be all for today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.